Have you ever wondered whether the drink you have right before bed could be affecting your blood pressure while you sleep? Because a lot of people think of bedtime drinks as harmless, a little tea to relax, a small glass of wine to unwind, maybe some cola with a late snack, maybe one of those healthy drinks that looks harmless because it says herbal, natural, or electrolyte on the label. And yet, for seniors with high blood pressure, that quiet little bedtime habit can become one of the most overlooked pressure spikes of the entire day. And what makes this especially important is that nighttime is not supposed to be a time when your cardiovascular system is working harder. In healthy physiology, blood pressure usually dips during sleep. Your body is supposed to shift into a more restorative state. Your heart is supposed to get a kind of nightly break. So if you regularly give your system a drink that raises blood pressure, disrupts sleep, increases sodium retention, stimulates stress hormones, or interferes with medication timing right before bed, you may be working directly against the most important recovery window in the entire 24-hour cycle. Now, I want to be careful here right from the start. This is not a scare video, and it is not personal medical advice. Not every drink affects every person the same way. Dose matters, timing matters, medications matter, individual sensitivity matters. But the biology here is real, and once you understand it, a lot of bedtime habits begin to look very different. Because some of the worst bedtime drinks are obvious, but a few of them are surprisingly deceptive. One of them is sold as relaxing. One of them is marketed as hydration. One of them sits in refrigerators all over the world, and almost nobody thinks of it as a blood pressure problem. And one of them sounds so healthy that many people never suspect it at all. So in this video, I want to walk you through the 7 worst bedtime drinks every senior with high blood pressure should think twice about. Not with vague warnings, not with empty slogans, but with actual physiology. What each drink does to blood vessels, fluid balance, sleep quality, heart rhythm, stress hormones, or nighttime blood pressure patterns. And by the end, the logic behind this list is going to feel very clear. Because when you understand the mechanism, you stop relying on guesswork. Let's start with something that most people never connect to blood pressure strongly enough, and that is what is supposed to happen to your pressure when you sleep. During normal sleep, blood pressure often falls compared with daytime levels. This is sometimes called nighttime dipping. It matters because your heart, arteries, and kidneys are not designed to be under the same pressure load around the clock. When that nighttime drop is reduced, delayed, or absent, the cardiovascular system loses part of its recovery period. That's one reason sleep quality and blood pressure are so closely linked. The heart doesn't just care what happens at noon, it cares what happens at midnight. Now add aging to that equation. As people get older, blood vessels tend to stiffen, sleep often becomes lighter and more fragmented, medication schedules become more complex, and the body can become more sensitive to alcohol, sodium shifts, stimulant effects, and dehydration. That means a bedtime drink that looked harmless at age 35 may behave very differently at age 70. And this is where the topic becomes interesting, because the problem is not just whether a drink is bad in some general sense. The problem is what that drink is doing at that specific time of day, inside that specific body, during the hours when blood pressure should be settling down. So let's begin with drink number 1, and this one is more common than people like to admit. Number 1, alcohol. A lot of people think of alcohol as a sleep drink, a small glass of wine, a little whiskey, maybe a nightcap after dinner. It feels calming, it feels relaxing, it feels like the day is over. And in the short term, alcohol can absolutely make a person feel sleepy. That is part of why this habit becomes so sticky. It gives immediate feedback that feels helpful. But sedation and restorative sleep are not the same thing. That distinction matters enormously. Older adults are more sensitive to alcohol's sedative effects than younger adults. That's been noted by aging and alcohol research for years. As the body ages, changes in muscle mass, body water, metabolism, and medication burden can make the same amount of alcohol hit harder. What used to feel mild can become physiologically much more disruptive. And the problem is not just sleep quality. Alcohol can raise blood pressure, and even moderate intake may worsen it in people who already have hypertension. That's where bedtime becomes the wrong place for false reassurance. People often think, it relaxes me, so it must be lowering my blood pressure. But relaxation as a feeling is not the same thing as what the cardiovascular system is actually doing over the next several hours. Alcohol can fragment sleep, worsen snoring or sleep-disordered breathing, and interfere with the deeper, more restorative phases of the night. And once sleep quality drops, the next day often brings higher stress, poorer glucose control, more fatigue, and sometimes more blood pressure variability. So the same drink that seemed to help you fall asleep may actually make the entire night less restorative. And then there's the medication issue, which becomes especially important for seniors. Alcohol can interact badly with a wide range of medications, including some used for blood pressure, sleep, anxiety, pain, and blood sugar control. That doesn't mean every person will experience a severe interaction, but it does mean bedtime alcohol is never as simple as one relaxing drink. Here's the deeper point I want you to hold on to. Alcohol is deceptive at night because it borrows comfort from the first 20 minutes and sends the bill later. It gives you drowsiness up front, then disrupts the physiology you actually need. So if the body is supposed to be moving into a quieter blood pressure pattern, alcohol is often not helping that process nearly as much as it feels like it is. And if that one surprised you, the next one surprises even more people because it doesn't come in a wine glass. It comes in a can. Number 2, energy drinks. If you are a senior with high blood pressure, bedtime and energy drinks should never be in the same sentence. And I know that sounds obvious, but you would be surprised how many people still have them late in the day thinking it's just one, or it doesn't affect me that much, or I need the boost because I'm tired. But physiologically, energy drinks are not just about staying awake. They can affect blood pressure, heart rhythm, and stress chemistry in ways that are completely out of sync with what the body needs before sleep. Studies and clinical commentary have shown that even one energy drink can produce a rapid increase in blood pressure. There have also been concerns about palpitations, rhythm irregularities, and changes in the electrical activity of the heart. That is not the sort of profile you want anywhere near bedtime if your cardiovascular system is already under strain. And what makes these drinks tricky is that people often think of them as strong soda or extra coffee, when in reality they are often a more complex stimulant package. Caffeine is there, yes, but so are other compounds, sugars, and additive combinations that can change how the body responds. The effect can feel sharper, messier, and more prolonged. There's also a second problem. If someone is reaching for an energy drink in the evening, that usually means fatigue is already present. And instead of respecting the fatigue as a signal that the nervous system wants rest, the drink overrides it. So now you have a tired body being chemically pushed into alertness. Blood pressure can rise, sleep gets delayed, sleep depth falls, and the next day starts with less recovery than the previous one. That is a terrible cycle for hypertension. One bad night does not stay in one night. It spills into the next morning as higher sympathetic activity, more irritability, more caffeine use, worse food choices, and often another late-day stimulant. This is how bedtime habits become blood pressure habits. And the really interesting part is that many people would never drink an energy drink at 10 p.m., but will drink one at 6 or 7 p.m., and then wonder why their sleep feels light, restless, or incomplete. Caffeine does not care whether the can looked too early to you. It cares about timing, dose, metabolism, and half-life. Which brings us naturally to the next drink, because this is the one people underestimate precisely because it seems ordinary. Number 3, cola and other caffeinated sodas. Now, if you ask most people which bedtime drink sounds worse, an energy drink or a cola, they'll say the energy drink. And they're right in degree. But the mistake is assuming that cola is therefore harmless. It isn't. Late-night cola combines two things that are particularly unhelpful before bed if you have high blood pressure: caffeine and sugar. And sometimes the problem is not the amount of either one individually, it's the timing. Caffeine can cause a short-term spike in blood pressure in some people, especially those who are more sensitive to it. It also interferes with sleep by making it harder to fall asleep, reducing total sleep time and cutting into deep sleep. Some sleep experts recommend avoiding caffeine at least 8 hours before bedtime, and some people need even more distance than that. Now think about what that means in real life. If a person goes to bed at 10 p.m., a cola at dinner, or even later with a snack, may be much closer to bedtime than their sleep physiology can comfortably handle. Then add the sugar. Sugar-sweetened beverages are associated with higher cardiovascular risk, and they create the kind of late-evening glucose surge that your body simply does not need before bed. Blood sugar rises, insulin responds, energy becomes dysregulated, and the body is pushed into metabolic activity when it should be drifting toward recovery. Even if the person falls asleep, that doesn't mean the physiology underneath is calm. And let me point out something that gets missed all the time. People often don't experience soda as activating in the same way they experience coffee, so they assume it must not be affecting them much. But perception is not measurement. A person can feel mostly normal and still be sleeping worse, retaining poor quality sleep, or nudging blood pressure in the wrong direction. So cola is not just a soft drink issue. At bedtime, it becomes a blood pressure timing issue, a sleep quality issue, and a next day recovery issue all at once. And if you think caffeinated soda is the main liquid sugar problem, wait until we get to the one people pour with the feeling that it's practically healthy. Number 4, sweet tea, bottled iced tea, and sugary tea. Drinks tea has a healthy reputation, and often that reputation is deserved. But not all tea is functioning the same way, and bedtime is where the details matter. A plain caffeine-free herbal tea is one thing. A sweet tea, a bottled tea drink, or a heavily sweetened iced tea is something else entirely. Because now you may be dealing with caffeine, a substantial sugar load, or both. And once again, bedtime changes the equation. Let's start with caffeine. A lot of people think only coffee counts. But tea can contain enough caffeine to matter, especially black tea, strong brewed tea, chai blends, or large bottled servings. If you are already someone whose sleep is easily disrupted, that late-day tea may be extending alertness far past when you wanted it to. Then there's the sugar issue, which is often much worse in prepared tea drinks than people assume. Sweet tea and bottled tea products can behave more like dessert beverages than simple tea. They can drive blood sugar upward, add unnecessary calories, and contribute to the same cardiovascular burden seen with other sugary drinks. And here's where the bedtime angle becomes especially important for seniors. As we age, sleep often becomes more fragile. That means it can take less disruption to create a poorer night. A drink that might not have fully wrecked sleep at 30 can absolutely thin out sleep at 70. A little more wakefulness, a few more bathroom trips, a little less deep sleep, a little more next-day fatigue. Those small changes accumulate. This is why late sweet tea is not just some sugar or some caffeine. It can be a triple hit: nervous system stimulation, glucose instability, and poorer sleep continuity. And that brings us to drink number 5, which may be the most deceptive drink on this entire list because it often arrives wearing a health halo. Number 5, licorice root tea. This one catches people off guard, because if you tell someone that cola can be a bad bedtime drink for high blood pressure, they nod. If you tell them an energy drink is a bad idea, they nod. But if you tell them a herbal tea could raise blood pressure, a lot of people look genuinely confused. And yet licorice root tea is one of the clearest examples of why natural does not automatically mean safe. The issue is a compound in licorice root called glycyrrhizin. This compound can affect the way the body handles sodium and potassium. That matters because sodium and potassium are deeply involved in fluid balance, blood vessel function, and pressure regulation. Too much glycyrrhizin can lead to raised blood pressure, fluid retention, low potassium, and even heart rhythm problems. That is not a small side note. That is the entire reason licorice tea belongs on this list. And the danger here is behavioral, not just chemical. People often drink herbal teas specifically at night because they want something soothing. So if a person chooses licorice-containing tea because it sounds calming, cleansing, spicy, or natural, they may repeat that habit nightly without ever suspecting it is working against their blood pressure. There are even case reports of serious blood pressure elevation linked to licorice tea use. And while extreme cases are not the norm, they are enough to make the mechanism impossible to ignore. This is not folklore. There is real physiology behind the warning. So the lesson here is not all herbal teas are bad. Not at all. The lesson is that the label herbal tells you almost nothing by itself. Herbs are biologically active. Some are soothing, some are stimulating, some interact with medications, some alter mineral balance. And licorice root is one of the herbs that deserves real caution in people with hypertension. And if you thought the most misleading bedtime drink was an herbal tea, the next one is even more modern and even more heavily marketed. Number 6, sports drinks and high-sodium electrolyte drinks. Hydration is good. That part is true. But the word hydration has become one of the most abused words in modern wellness marketing. Because a lot of people now assume that any beverage labeled electrolyte must be useful, and that assumption becomes a problem when high blood pressure enters the conversation. Many sports drinks and electrolyte beverages contain substantial sodium. In the right context, sodium replacement has a role, but bedtime in a sedentary older adult with hypertension is usually not that context. If you have not just completed prolonged intense exercise with heavy sweat loss, loading up on a sodium-heavy drink before bed can make very little physiological sense. Too much sodium increases fluid retention and can raise blood pressure. This is basic cardiovascular physiology. The body holds on to more water, blood volume can rise, and the system has more pressure to manage. That is the opposite of what you want overnight. And what makes these drinks so misleading is the packaging. They look efficient, they look smart, they look clinical. They give the impression that you're doing something precise for your body. but if the product is high in sodium and often also high in sugar, it may be giving a senior with high blood pressure the exact combination they need less of. This is especially important because not all sports drinks are created equal. Some are basically sugar and sodium delivery systems with a fitness costume on top. And if they're consumed before bed, when physical demand is low and sleep should be the priority, the body may simply experience them as unnecessary sodium, unnecessary sugar, and sometimes unnecessary bathroom trips in the middle of the night. That last part matters more than people think. If a bedtime drink increases overnight urination, it can fracture sleep. And once sleep gets fractured, blood pressure control gets harder. So even when the sodium itself is the headline problem, sleep disruption can become the second hidden mechanism. So hydration matters, yes, but smart hydration and bedtime marketing hype are not the same thing. And now we get to drink number 7, which is incredibly common because it doesn't come from a sports aisle or an herbal section. It comes from the idea of having something light before bed. Number 7, fruit juice and other sugary light. Bedtime drinks. Fruit juice has one of the strongest health halos in the beverage world. People hear fruit and think vitamins. They hear juice and think simple. They hear just a small glass and think harmless. But for seniors with high blood pressure, especially at bedtime, juice is often a much worse choice than people realize. The problem is not that fruit is bad. Whole fruit is a different food. Whole fruit comes with fiber, structure, and slower absorption. Juice removes most of that buffering effect and concentrates the sugars into a form that can hit the system quickly. That means a bedtime glass of juice can create a rapid glucose load at the exact time when the body should not be chasing a blood sugar spike. And if the juice is store-bought, sweetened, blended, or consumed in a large serving, the effect can become even more exaggerated. Now, can a single small glass of juice destroy someone's health? Of course not. But that's not the right question. The right question is this. If you are a senior with high blood pressure and you are choosing a bedtime drink, is juice helping the physiology of the night or making it less stable? Usually, it's the second one. Because late sugar does not simply vanish into the night. It influences glucose handling, insulin response, sleep quality, and sometimes reflux or nighttime awakenings. And when these patterns repeat night after night, they can shape the way a person feels every morning. Heavier, more tired, more thirsty, more likely to reach for more caffeine, more likely to feel that their sleep wasn't terrible, even though it was never truly restorative. And let me add one more category here because it sits right next to juice in people's minds. Sweetened milk drinks, flavored nutrition drinks, dessert shakes, and bedtime beverages that sound nourishing, but are actually loaded with sugar. These can create the same late-evening metabolic clutter. A bedtime drink should not behave like a hidden dessert if blood pressure and sleep quality are already concerns. So now we've gone through the 7 drinks. But I want to step back for a moment because the real pattern behind this list is more important than memorizing the list itself. The 7 worst bedtime drinks for seniors with high blood pressure are not random. They all tend to disrupt one or more of the same 5 systems. First, they can raise blood pressure directly through stimulant effects, alcohol effects, sodium retention, or vascular stress. Second, they can worsen sleep quality, which matters because poor sleep is tightly linked to worse blood pressure control. Third, they can interfere with the normal nighttime dip in pressure, which is one of the most important restorative patterns in cardiovascular health. Fourth, some can complicate medication or electrolyte balance, especially in older adults who are already managing multiple prescriptions. And fifth, they can create next-day consequences that keep the cycle going. More fatigue, more thirst, more caffeine, more cravings, more pressure variability. Once you see those 5 mechanisms, the list stops feeling arbitrary. And that also explains why the best bedtime drink is usually far less exciting than people want it to be. Because the body at night does not need entertainment. It needs stability. Now, I know some people are listening to this and thinking, fine, but what am I supposed to drink instead? And the answer is not glamorous, it is just sensible. For many people, the simplest options are still the best options. Plain water earlier in the evening, not too late if nighttime urination is a problem, or a caffeine-free, licorice-free, lightly flavored herbal tea that doesn't bring sugar, stimulants, or mineral-disrupting compounds into the picture. The principle matters more than the specific brand. At bedtime, the drink should not push your blood pressure up, disturb your sleep, or complicate your physiology. That's the standard. And I think this is where a lot of health content goes wrong. It tries to sell people a magic bedtime drink, as if the solution must be exotic to be effective. But for seniors with high blood pressure, the more honest answer is often that the best bedtime drink is the one that does the least harm. Because the body already knows how to sleep. The cardiovascular system already knows how to settle. The nervous system already knows how to downshift. The problem is that we keep adding things that interrupt those processes and then act surprised when the night doesn't restore us.